Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Cadet First Class Jonathan Gazinski, and it is my privilege to welcome you to the 26th Annual National Character and Leadership Symposium, made possible by our flagship supporter, the Class of '73, the Association of Graduates, the Air Force Endowment, and many generous supporters. It is now my pleasure to introduce to you today's speaker. Mr. Nate Boyer, a former active duty Green Beret, is a philanthropist, community leader, and a professional athlete as a former member of the Seattle Seahawks. Go Hawks. Boyer was deployed with the 10th Special Forces Group to Iraq, then served 2 tours in Afghanistan with Special Operations Joint Forces Afghanistan and 3rd Special Forces Group. A 4-year player for the Texas Longhorns, Boyer served as the number one long snapper on special teams his last 3 seasons. He played in 39 career games, and in 2012, Boyer received the Disney Spirit Award at the ESPN College Football Awards, given to the most inspirational figure in college football. In 2013, the National Football Foundation awarded him with the coveted Legacy Award. He was also named first Team Capital One Academic All-American in 2013 and was nominated to the 2014 All-State AFCA Good Works Team. Boyer was named 2012 to 2013 Big 12 Sport Person of the Year, and in 2012 became the first ever recipient of the Armed Forces Merit Award presented by the Football Writers Association of America. If that wasn't enough, each year, he climbs Mount Kilimanjaro with wounded veterans and former NFL players to raise money for clean water wells in East Africa. Boyer also co-founded Merging Vets and Players, MVP, which helps former athletes and combat vets find purpose and a newfound identity when they leave the service. Ladies and gentlemen, it really is an honor to introduce to you our speaker for today, Mr. Nate Boyer.
Thank you, bro.
Thank you very much, sir.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Am I good? I can't tell if the microphone's on. Okay, cool. My hearing sucks, sorry. You guys will get there if it doesn't already. Thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it. This is pretty cool. I had to wear a little bit of army green just to balance everything out. But just in case you thought, I didn't have a little bit of luck. I don't know if that's a good, I can't zip back up. I'm stuck. Whatever. I guess this is happening. Hold on. There we go. Sorry. I couldn't do it the whole time. It's a little much. Yeah, seriously, thank you guys. Thank you guys for having me. It's an honor. I actually was stationed my last couple years on active duty down at Carson. And when I was getting ready to go try out for the football team at Texas, I'd come up here to the practice fields by myself and do, agility drills and training like that. This is a special place. I'm sure you know that. But yeah, don't take it for granted. There's no base like this. There's no chapel like that. And yeah, it's pretty awesome. So yeah, I grew up in the Bay Area. I'm a California guy. Neighborhood I grew up in was, right between Berkeley and Richmond. And my dad's a racehorse veterinarian. He still works at Golden Gate Fields out there. My mom's an environmental engineer. Between the two of them, they got, PhD and racehorse veterinarian, 19 years of college or something crazy. And growing up, I didn't really see myself as that. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was me holding myself back or just a fear of not living up to standards, But I always loved sports. Sports was always my outlet. That was my escape. And I limited myself, I think, educationally. I didn't apply myself like I could have. I tested well on stuff, but I didn't put the work in, and I didn't really know how to work. And that led to, me graduating high school and going to work on a fishing boat for a while, which was amazing. I mean, that like blue collar feel, that idea of earning your own living, earning what you got on your own. That was cool to me. That was something that I took a lot of pride in, and I loved that year as far as being on my own, providing for myself, and kind of doing it my own way. But, you quickly discover in life, if you don't have a specific mission or purpose or something that you're fighting for, or a big goal, and I think pretty much everybody in this room can probably relate to that, or you will be able to relate to that as you move through life. It gets confusing, it gets tough. Life starts to weigh on you, and you kind of wonder where your place is and who you are, and do I really matter? If I was really around, would it make a difference? Would the world just be exactly as it is, or do I actually have a positive effect on people's lives around me? And so that was in 1999 to 2000. So then I moved up to Los Angeles. At the time, I was interested in working in film and TV. I had no idea what. I had no background in it, was never interested in it until I was 19, and moved up to Los Angeles and pretty much just partied, to be honest. I didn't know where to start. I didn't want help from anybody, people trying to help me, and I'm just always like, I'm going to do it myself. I'm going to do it my own way, which I would learn later in life, that without a team around you, without a wingman, you guys get that one, you can't accomplish anything. You can't do anything great, Without obstacles, there's no greatness, but also without a great team, it's just impossible. And as morbid as it sounds, as horrible as that day is for our country's history, 9/11 was a big turning point for me and sort of projected me in a different direction, and ultimately a positive one. So, the lesson in that for me has just always been that when bad things happen, when you're at your lowest, when you have these obstacles in life, those are just opportunities to come out on top, to be great. When you're at your bottom, the only way to go is up. And for our country, I think that was one of the ultimate bottoms, at least in my lifetime. And, it affected everybody in different ways. Everybody that was old enough to remember, it had an effect. It changed your life in some way, the way you looked at things, the way you thought about things. And for me, it got me thinking actually globally for the first time in my life. And the military wasn't something that jumped out at me right away. It wasn't this obvious thing, of okay, I'm gonna go fight. And there was a lot of people that I knew that were I was 20 years old. And there was a lot of people around my age that, immediately went and enlisted. And I thought that was just so incredible. Just what a lot of them were giving up. A lot of them were in school. A lot of them had a career ahead of them, right? And they made this decision to fight for their country, to fight for the people around them, to fight for those that can't fight for themselves. And I just started traveling first, to be honest. I would work all kinds of different odd jobs and save my money up, and then I would go overseas. I'd go to backpacking through Europe or Central America or somewhere like that, and I'd sleep in a hammock or on the trains or whatever. I didn't really have any money, and just figure it out and learn, experience other cultures, experience other things, try to kind of figure out, get a sense of the world, what's going on. Why would things like this, how could things like this happen? How could something like that happen in my country? Because, the bubble I grew up in, I didn't grow up wealthy or anything like that, but all I knew was my neighborhood. I didn't really think about things outside of that. And those travels definitely opened my eyes to a lot of things. And I remember, I guess it wasn't until 2004, and I came back home from one of those trips, and at this time, I was 23 years old, still didn't really have a plan or a path or an ultimate goal that I was striving for. It was sort of just existing, feeling like you're always in this constant limbo of I want to save up enough to go over and explore again, and then come back, and just no real purpose. And I was handed this Time magazine article from one of my best friends, and he was an aspiring photographer, and he just really loved this war photographer named Jim Knockway and some of the work that he did. And Jim Knockway had just gotten back from the Sudan, and he was in the Darfur region of the Sudan. This is at the height of the genocide in the Darfur. And, you know, at that time in 2004, I think 300,000 people had already been murdered. Women and children are abandoned in these refugee camps. You know, most of the women had been raped, the children had been maimed, the fathers were off fighting or killed already. And it was horrible. Their villages burned to the ground in front of their eyes, right? And I was reading about how they were understaffed, undermanned at these refugee camps. They needed people, they needed help. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna go do that. I'm gonna go help. And so I called every NGO out there, from Doctors Without Borders to Child Fund to all of them. And understandably, you know, there's a lot of red tape with volunteer positions like that. And they wanted people with college degrees, and they wanted people with special skills, and they wanted people that were going to be able to go out there and provide something, I guess, not just like blue-collar labor, you know, because that's all I really had to offer. And so they told me no. All of them said, I'm sorry, you can't help. And I'm like, but you're understaffed. Like, I'm reading about it, you know, and I've studied it, and I know. And they're like, yeah, I understand, but it's just the way it is, and we're trying to figure that out. I was like, all right, well, to myself, I'm gonna go over there anyway, you know. And I went to this AAA. We used to always buy our travels, plane tickets, and book hotels at the AAA back in the day. I need water. Back in the day. They didn't, excuse me. We didn't book everything online back then. It was just different. And I go down there and I'm like, I want to fly as close as I can to the Darfur. Where is that? And the lady told me it's this place called N'Djamena in Chad. It's the capital of Chad. It was relatively easy to obtain a visa for there, and so I said, great, let's do it. I bought that ticket, you know, and a week later I'm flying over there. And I just remember flying into the capital there, getting into the little airport in the middle of the night, getting off the plane. Nobody speaks English. It's mostly tribal dialects, you know, French. It's a Muslim country. Total culture shock for me. And at the same time, I was like more excited than I think I'd ever been, you know, because I felt filled with purpose. I didn't even know what I was going to end up doing, but I just felt like I was in the right place. I essentially BS'd my way onto a UN flight, these little prop planes from the UNHCR, United Nations High Commission for Refugees. They flew over every day to the refugee camps and dropped off the volunteers, you know, and almost all the volunteers were either, you know, local or they were doctors from French-speaking countries. And I talked my way onto this flight because I had an extra seat open, and I told the little Chadian man that was had the manifest in his hand and like checking people in. Obviously, my name wasn't on it, and I told him I was robbed in Paris and that all my documentation was taken, and yeah, it was a well-meaning lie. It was a good lie, but he believed me, you know, and I think he could tell more that I just was like, I think he bought into my passion, you know. And I flew over there. I got off the plane, sort of weaseled my way through their little security setup there, and essentially got on the back of a pickup truck and headed out to these refugee camps. And I volunteered there for 2 months. It was only 2 months. I volunteered there for 2 months, and it completely changed my life. I mean, I was assisting in the medical centers. I was helping build the camps. I was helping dig ditches for sanitation, helping with clean water filtration. I was playing soccer with the kids every day, you know, and that was the coolest part to me, and I think to them, because the amazing part about that was, first of all, in these villages, I mean, they literally need one soccer ball, and all the kids are happy. It's pretty unbelievable, you know. They don't need their own toys. They want to play together. Most of them don't have shoes. But that's all they need. They need that, and if they get one meal a day, they're happy, you know. And that perspective really blew me away. And I felt like I hadn't done anything to earn what I had here, you know. I felt appreciative of it. I felt patriotic for my country because the way that people spoke about America over there, you know, the questions that they asked me about what life was like, and America being this beacon of hope for people like that, you know, this idea of a place where, you know, you do have ultimate freedoms. And, you know, and I remember this one young man, he was probably 17, 18 years old. He was asking me how he could join the military, the American military. And I was like, man, I honestly have no idea. I wouldn't know where to start with that. He spoke very little English, and it was just, you know, that was a tough one. And I almost felt like, I felt guilty that I hadn't really considered that, genuinely considered that for myself, you know, to sort of earn that Americanism, you know, to earn my stars and stripes, I guess. And so the last week in country there, I got malaria. I took my doxy. I did everything they said I was supposed to do. I still got malaria. And so I got, this family put me up. They took me in. They put me up in their compound, and I had this little mud hut sort of quarantined away from everybody else. And they had a little cot in there and this radio, and that was all that was in there. And I couldn't keep food down. I could barely drink water. Like, it was just bad. And so I was just listening to the radio, you know. I played this Bob Marley tape, like it's two-sided, one of those little, you know, tape. I don't know what you call them. Cassette, yeah. And I went through that about 3 times on both sides, and I was kind of done with Bob Marley at that point. And so I just turned on the BBC. That was the only station they got, and it was like, that was during the Second Battle of Fallujah in 2004. And so I'm listening to the play-by-play of these Marines that were going in and risking everything, you know, risking their lives for people that they didn't know and would never meet and maybe don't fully understand. And it just moved me, you know. I thought that was like that affirmation I needed, that was maybe the next step in my life. And I came back to the States, and I knew I wanted to join the military. I didn't know what I was going to do exactly. I started looking around some of the different branches, and I found out about this program that had opened up in the Army for the Special Forces called the 18 X-ray program. And so basically the way that it worked was, if you scored high enough on like a language aptitude and, you know, your ASVAB test and PT and psych eval, you'd get this contract to go into basic training. From basic training, you'd go to airborne school. If you passed that, you go to a pre-selection course. And if you pass that, you go to selection with the rest of the regular Army guys that were, you know, hoping to be Green Berets as well. And if you pass that, then it's about 1.5 years to go through all the training to earn your Green Beret. And I just made the decision kind of that day, like that was what I was going to do. It just felt right. The motto of the Special Forces is De Oppresso Libere, which means to free the oppressed. And that really spoke to me because of what I had just seen and experienced in the Darfur. And so I did it. I signed up that day. You know, a couple weeks later, I'm heading off to basic training. And, you know, I was not in good shape. I had really, you know, I played sports growing up. I played pretty much every sport but football, believe it or not. I played everything else. You know, when I was real young, my mom didn't want me to play because she was worried about some of the injury stuff. And by the time I was 14, I remember thinking, all these kids have got such a jump on me. You know, they've been playing since they're 8 years old. I'm never going to catch up. I'm never going to, you know, be good enough to compete with them. And so at 14 years old, I made the decision to never play football, kind of, you know, and huge regret because it was my favorite sport. I was Joe Montana for Halloween 2 years in a row, and all my heroes were football players. Like, that was my heroes. And it was, that always bothered me a little bit, you know, and we'll get back to that in a bit. But yeah, so I'm in basic, and I remember the first PT test, and I'd been training for it a little bit, because when I did the PT test with my recruiter, I don't know if I should share this information. He definitely BS'd my numbers, because I couldn't, like push-ups, I just wasn't doing anything like that. I had no upper body strength, I couldn't do push-ups. I'd crap out on sit-ups pretty quick. I was running 2 miles in like 15 minutes maybe. Not Special Forces standards by any means. And that first PT test in basic, they probably do the same thing with y'all. Like they set you up for failure, because they smoke you for like 3 days straight, and then you do it. And so I think I did like 20-something push-ups in 2 minutes, and like maybe 50 sit-ups, and ran 2 miles in 15 minutes. And one of the bottoms of the class, because everybody in my basic training class had the same contract I did. But I just kind of made a decision right there that it was like, I think a lot of people were already reserved to the fact they probably weren't going to make it. And they just sort of believed, this is a cool opportunity, we'll see what happens, but I'll try my best, but it's not up to me. And I didn't really want to take that, I didn't want to have that way of thinking, that thought process in my head. It was like, I make it. That's pretty much it. There wasn't really an or. There wasn't really a plan B. I mean, it's needs of the Army anyway. They're going to send you where they want. It's not up to you. So all I could focus on was everything I could control, which was how hard I worked, putting myself in the right position, Same things I always tell you, right place, right time, right uniform, right attitude. Even if you don't feel it, fake it. And all those things. And just outworking the guy to my left and right. They were my teammates, but at that moment, they were also my competitors. And I just wanted to work harder than everybody. So I pushed myself. Any free time we had in basic training, which isn't very often, I'd go down to the track and put my body armor on and do like a mile of lunges or something just stupid and ridiculous, like something you thought you maybe couldn't do, something that you thought, that sounds crazy, but I'll try it, and then you just keep going and somehow your body gets through it. The body's capable of some pretty incredible things if your mind believes that it can happen. It just follows, it's unreal. And so, by the end of basic training, I think my last PT test was I did 145 push-ups in 2 minutes. I did over 100 sit-ups. I ran 2 miles in under 11 minutes in 14 weeks, 14 weeks from I don't know who that guy was to this is who I wanted to be. And it was just because of the mindset and pushing myself every day and being okay with the fact that I was probably going to suck for a little bit at whatever it was, and it was going to hurt, accepting that. And that propelled me through the Q course too, the Special Forces qualification course. And there's so many stories with that, and a lot of things I'm not supposed to share anyway. But it was hell. I mean, SF stands for Special Forces, but it also stands for Suckfest. It's horrible. It also stands for Security Forces, I believe, in your world, right? Correct? Yeah. But yeah, it was the greatest and the most horrible time of my life. I mean, that's what they say about SEER school, especially. It's the worst, best school in the Army. What you put yourself through, what you learn on the back end of that. But when you're in those moments, every day a little piece of you wants to quit. Sometimes a pretty big piece of you wants to quit and to give up, just because it's hard and it's frustrating. But I remembered why I was there, and I just kept pushing. And I got through it. And I got my Green Beret, and I earned my Green Beret, I should say. And then I was, I was in the Army, and I was in the Special Forces, and I was going overseas, and I loved what I did. I loved deploying. I always was just looking for the next deployment. That was what it was always about for me. I wanted to go to Iraq. I wanted to go to Afghanistan. I wanted the most austere environments and the toughest missions. That's what I wanted. I felt more at home in those moments, in that uncomfortability, and working with people, indigenous forces especially, people that you don't understand, the cultures, the customs, you don't agree with everything. Sometimes you don't even know exactly what the mission is. It's complicated, it's tough. But it was always about leaning on leadership. And when I say leadership, and I know I'm speaking to a specific room of leaders here, leaders, they come out of every rank, every background. They're not always wearing camouflage. I think that was an important lesson for me and something to remember, because I learned as much from the people over there in Iraq and Afghanistan than I did from the men and women I fought alongside that had an American flag on their shoulders. And that's important to remember, you know, because as you go out there, to keep that open mind, to listen, you know, be available and want to learn from those people, from everybody. Because those are the best leaders that I've come across, are the ones that are willing to listen, and the ones that understand that, you know, you don't always have to come up with the great idea. You don't always have to be, it doesn't have to be your stamp on it. You know what I mean? When you put people in positions to be successful on your team, when you're in leadership, in ultimate leadership, and you know, you have to delegate, you have to make the final call, yes, but when you put the men and women around you, below you, essentially, in the positions to be successful, and let them do their jobs, you know, when their specific job is something that is maybe out of your scope, to just let them do their work. I mean, the most successful sports teams I've been around, you know, when the head coach, someone like Mac Brown, you know, he hires a staff of coaches, right? Because he wants each one of those people to lead their specific position group or squad. And he wants to be able to trust them, you know, and not have to micromanage, not have to be in their ear the whole time. And he understands that sometimes, you know, he wants to make a play call, but somebody else has a better idea. It's okay that it's not yours. You know, it's okay that it didn't come from your brain. Because it's all about mission success, period. That's what it should be about. And yeah, I mean, it comes from crazy places when you're over there. I mean, you'll see. It's unbelievable. But the best leaders to me were the ones that were willing to do the dirty jobs with everybody else, you know. They might be telling each, you know, we got to go clean the bathrooms today, but you know, the best leader is the one who takes the smallest toothbrush and cleans the dirtiest toilet. You know what I mean? Everybody else wants to follow that. So that's what it's all about. It's like developing a team that wants to get behind you, get behind what you're about, you know, and it's not always the guys that are the most eloquent. I'm definitely not the most eloquent, as you can see. It's not about, you know, the ones that have the most medals and the highest rank all the time. You know, it's the ones that are just willing to do whatever it takes for the team, for the mission, for the man on your left and right. And so yeah, it's 2009. I'm finishing up a deployment in Iraq. 28 years old at the time, almost 29. And I have this crazy pull on me, you know, about, I don't even know where it came from, but this like desire to go back and try and play football. I think it was just regret, you know. And on deployments, I mean, for me, it was like, during football season, that was my escape. We had a pretty high op tempo in the Special Forces, and you know, you're out there every night on missions, almost every night, you know, going after bad guys and doing what we do. And in the day, we're training alongside indigenous forces and working with those people, living with those people. And sometimes you need, you know, something just for you. Some people play Call of Duty. Some people play dominoes. Some people watch football. And I watched football. And it was like, yeah, it was this great escape for me. It was something to kind of take me out of I don't want to say the horrors, because I don't think everything I experienced was horrible, but some of the tough stuff that you have to experience at war, I guess. And so I'd be watching these college games and pro games, and I mean, I get back from a mission at 4 in the morning, and I'm staying up till 9 in the morning because I'm watching Monday Night Football. It's like 10 hours ahead or something. And I like needed that, you know, and it just became something that resonated with me so much, and I just had this crazy idea that I was going to go back to the States and go to college and try to play football. And the reason I chose Texas, I've been to Texas like once, you know, but I chose Texas because I love the city of Austin. Austin's a great city. If you've never been, check it out. But also, Texas was good to their veterans. It was a great school with a legendary football program. But I saw that Longhorn logo hanging in more windows on my deployment, in the barracks than I saw anywhere else. We'd go visit other bases, and it's like, it's just something that I always noticed that. And Mac Brown had gone over there on USO tours before, and people that I'd met that knew him said that, he'd make the helicopter wait before taking off so he could go shake every hand and sign every autograph and meet everybody over there. And that meant a lot to me. So I came back to here, to the Springs. I was in 10th Special Forces Group at the time at Fort Carson. And I went back there and I started training at the NSCA, it's the National Strength and Conditioning Association, sort of near the Olympic Training Center. And I was training purely on football, focusing on football. I'd started actually training in Iraq. I was running routes in the sand and trying to learn how to backpedal and Googling and YouTubing how to play football. And that's literally how I learned, and just watching other people. And I got done. I had one more quick trip to Israel. I got back in December, and then in January, I went down to Texas. And first day of school my birthday was January 9th. The first day of school was the 10th, and the first day of tryouts was the 11th. And I did just like I'd done in basic training. I just went harder than everybody on every drill. And sometimes I went in the wrong direction, and I got destroyed. I got absolutely trucked all the time. But I got ran over with dignity. You know what I mean? I mean, I just took it like a champ, man, and I wasn't gonna I wasn't gonna ever stay down when I got knocked down. I wasn't gonna let anybody know that they hurt me or affected me. And I get through the first couple weeks. I've been staying at a Motel 6 and filling the bathtub up with ice every night and getting in the cold tub, trying to heal my body. And I come back one day in the locker room, and there's a jersey hanging with my name on it, and there's burnt orange cleats, and it was pretty incredible. I remember the first time I had to put pads on. I'm looking around at the other kids, literally kids, watching them. Well, you guys, your age, watching them put their pads on so I could see how to put them on, because I didn't want to put it on wrong and look like an idiot. It was crazy. It was funny though. It was interesting. When we get through that first season, I'm just on the scout team, and I wanted to find a way on the field. So I identified a thankless job, which was long snapping. Most people in here maybe don't even know what a long snapper is. It's the guy that hikes the ball through his legs on punts, field goals, and extra points. It's a specialized position. You typically don't have to be as great of an athlete as the other guys in the team. But no one wants to do it, because you could do it 500 times perfectly and screw up once and you're the bad guy. Nobody cares about you when you do it right. And so the starter was a senior that year, and I started learning how to long snap. I enlisted in the Texas National Guard at that time, so I was still serving. And the deal that I'd struck was that I wouldn't have to go to drill during the football season, but that I would deploy in the summertime. So I'd get done with, football was in the fall. I'd take my classes in the spring, play spring ball, take my finals early, and then I would deploy. I'd go to Afghanistan for about 3.5 months. And I told Coach Brown before that summer, before my sophomore year, I was going to take a couple footballs with me and practice long snapping and come back and win the job, And he asked me, he said, well, have you ever long snapped before? And I said, Coach, I never played football before I got here, and I made the team. He didn't know that. He was like, really? I'm like, yeah. And so I went over there and I did. I built this target out of plywood. I had a little hole at the bottom for field goals and extra points, and a bigger one up here for punts. And I'd set it 15 yards away from me, down on this little soccer pitch on the Afghan side of the base, actually. And it was I called it Afghan TV. All the kids would come out and just watch, because it was just this weird white dude, throwing a ball between his legs by himself into a wooden target. And they just couldn't wrap their brains around that one. It was like, they're playing like cricket and soccer, like, with their friends, and like this guy in the corner, just being creepy. But I did what I had to do, and I came back and was fortunate enough to win the job. And I started for 38 or 39 straight games in college through the next 3 years. I don't want to say never had a bad snap. Never had a disaster. I had plenty of imperfect snaps. But I had a punter or a holder that understood, how important their job was too. I made sure they understood how important their job was too to make me look good. And the guards next to me, there's a 320-pound left guard and right guard, and I'm like 180, snapping between them, making sure they understood how important it was to help block. I mean, I'm not going to be able to, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to be able to block this 280-pound defensive tackle. He's just going to run me over. So you're going to have to help. And it worked out. It's a team sport, it's a team game. The thing I liked about football compared with the military, it was like all about the man next to you, setting them up for success. Making sure you do your job, stay in your lane, police yourself up, and make sure that their job's easier, That's what it's all about. That's what the most successful teams understand that. You don't have to have all the stats, you don't have to make all the plays, as long as you are in position and it's all about the man next to you. Because that's what it's like in a firefight. It's not about, you don't think about your own security so much as the men on your left and right, the men and women on your left and right. And that's what I love about the game, and that's what I loved about even that position. I had a lot of responsibility being that guy, but I wanted that. I want the hard jobs, you know what I mean? I want to be challenged. I want a lot on my shoulders if possible. And so I get through those first couple years of playing, and it's coming up on my senior year, and I go to Afghanistan one more time, and I'm over there, and it was a long summer. This is only in 2014. It's not that long ago, but we got in a lot. We were involved in a lot of firefights. There was a lot going on at the time. It was the last commando mission with the Afghan commandos. They were in the lead on a lot of the missions. It was our 12-man ODA, and sometimes up to 70 of them, of the Afghans, were fighting alongside out on these missions. And the very last one, maybe 2 weeks before I came back to the States, was maybe the biggest firefight I'd ever been in. And I'm not going to get into like the whole war story thing because it's not really my deal, but it's getting towards the end of the day, and we've been in it all day. And I'm on the tailgate of the MAT-V, and I'm laying down suppressive fire, and just next to me over here is the Afghan captain, and he's trying to control his guys. His guys are all over the place. They don't have the equipment, the commo that we have. They don't have that. They don't have the resources that we have. They're doing everything they can with what they got, and it's tough. It's tough for any commander in a situation like that. And so he's out there, he's running around, in the open trying to control his guys, and he got shot. And he was bleeding out through his neck, and I can't leave my position because if I do, I'm going to leave a bunch of other people vulnerable. So two of our guys, our team sergeant and our medic, run over, and they're treating this Afghan, leader because he didn't have any of his men anywhere nearby. They're doing everything they can to save his life, but unfortunately he passed away, right? And it's like it's later that evening, and the dust is sort of settled, and we've gotten away from the kill zone, and the medevac helicopter comes in, and typically, nobody except Americans are supposed to approach the medevac bird, right? But in this case, it was just a matter of, limited resources. What we had security up, and so we had this split split team carrying the gurney out of this body. And so it was three Afghans and 3 Americans carrying this gurney to the bird to put it on, right? They carry it out there, and they load his body. The helicopter takes off, and one of the Afghan men, like coming back away from the bird, just like dropped to his knees and started weeping, And for me, it just had such a profound effect because, I hadn't really thought, selfishly, I guess, I hadn't really thought about how war was affecting those soldiers, those troops, the Afghan troops. It was always about how is it affecting us? You know what I mean? How is it affecting us back home? But how is it affecting us over there? How is it affecting our families? But what about them? What about that? What about living in that for 19, 18 years now, whatever? And that had a big effect on me to see how much, it meant to him. How much it hurt him, but how much that meant to him, like losing his leader. And it sort of cemented things for me because, like I said, the mission wasn't always clear. Through my deployments, it's tough. You don't know sometimes exactly what the end state is, what the desirable effects are. You're trying to figure that out, and it's always changing. It's always adjusting. I'm a firm believer in. I think it's an Edmund Burke quote that the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. So I'm a firm believer that in these tragedies that happen in the world, we have to be there. This country has to be there because people look up to us. Yeah, we get smeared all over the place within our own country and abroad sometimes with how they think we are as a unit, as a country. But in times of crisis, they're always calling us first, and we're expected to go. And we do. We volunteer. Sometimes they have to cut it off. We have too many volunteers. And they say, you know what? It's just amazing. It's not like that anywhere else. And so that really brought it home for me, though, as far as my time in the military. Just to understand, and at a minimum, the people I worked alongside, the people I fought alongside, the Afghans, the Iraqis, how much it meant to them, the pride that was instilled in them in their own country. Fighting for something, fighting for this idea or hopes of having just a taste of what we have here was special to me. And I came back home a couple weeks later from that, and I traded my Kevlar and for the last time, and take my football helmet and pads for what I think would be the last time to go play my senior year at Texas. And the season ends. We didn't really have a good year. We made it to a bowl game, limped into it, and just got destroyed. I thought that was it. I kind of figured that was the end of football, and it was a little bittersweet, just the way that it ended. But I had the honor of running out of the tunnel with the American flag for every game that I played in. And I always felt like I was representing something bigger than us, something bigger than me, something bigger than just the military, but just our country and the people that did, lay their lives down over the centuries for what that flag is supposed to represent. And it meant a lot to me, And I got this phone call a couple weeks after the bowl game asking if I wanted to play in this. This is called the Medal of Honor Bowl. It was an all-star game for seniors in college, and I said, sure, I'll play one more time. It was in Charleston, down at the Citadel. And I go down there, and during that week of practices, there's all these scouts out there. And there's scouts and even some coaches from NFL teams. And, I was 34 years old at the time, kind of figuring no one's really going to be interested in me. And 4 different teams actually came up throughout the week, talked to me, expressed interest. And I was like, are you being serious? Are you asking, do I want to be a scout? Or are you asking, do I want to play football? And no, they said they were serious. And so I was like, okay. And I was told by a bunch of them I needed to put on about 30 pounds. So I started eating right away. a lot. I went from 100 and I think I went from about 190 to, I think I got all the way up to 228 at my heaviest. Before I went up to, before I had an opportunity in the NFL. And it was the last day of the draft in 2015. I knew I wasn't going to get drafted, but I was hoping I was going to get a free agent opportunity. And it was the biggest day in sports history, supposedly. It was the Kentucky Derby, Pacquiao-Mayweather fight, Game 7s in hockey and the NBA, and then the last day of the NFL draft. And the last pick is taken in the draft by the Arizona Cardinals. And I'm sitting there like awkwardly staring at my phone, hoping it'll ring. And I got 2 calls simultaneously from the St. Louis Rams at the time and from the Seattle Seahawks. And I had to make a decision. They both wanted to sign me as a free agent. I chose Seattle because they'd been to back-to-back Super Bowls. And at the time, the Rams just weren't very good. But I wanted that challenge. I was like, if I'm going to go anywhere, I want to go to the best. If I'm going to get cut, I want to get cut by the best team. So I went to Seattle, and I go up there, go through training camp, get an opportunity to play in one game. And it was against Peyton Manning and the Denver Broncos in his last season. And I'm out there on the field pregame. I'm warming up. It's raining. Of course, it's Seattle. And the stadium's packed. I'm a little bit nervous, and I'm looking over, and like Peyton Manning's chunking footballs next to me in those stupid gloves he wears. And but it was incredible. I could already feel myself like kind of getting overwhelmed with that feeling, just like this looking down at my uniform and like up in this like unbelievable, this is actually happening. And I go back in the tunnel in the locker room, and the equipment manager comes out and asks me if I wanted to lead the team out of the tunnel with the American flag. Like, usually they don't have a player do that. And I'd done it in college. I guess they probably saw some video or something, and they asked me, if I would do the honor, and I said, of course, I would love to. So I run out of the tunnel with the flag, lead the team out, and I'm standing on the sidelines getting ready for kickoff, and all of a sudden I hear the announcement about, would everybody please rise for the national anthem. And in college, you're not on the field during the anthem as a player. You're in the locker room, and then we come out afterwards. And in the NFL, the tradition is different, at least in recent history, of being on the sideline. And so I'm like, oh, where's the tallest flag? Like, what do I do? A little bit nervous. Find it, put my hand on my heart. The song starts playing. The anthem's being sung, and like I just got emotional. And it's not just because of the anthem. It was because of everything. It was because of that day. It's because of everything that was going on, everything I'd sort of, I don't want to say been through, but experienced to get to that moment. The people that weren't there to see it, that didn't make it back. My family. The kid that was 14 years old and thought he wasn't good enough. All that stuff, that was like, it was a big moment for me. And, I get emotional just talking about it, just thinking about it. And I was just bawling, just, ugly cry. There's video or photos. I've seen it. It's bad. And then the game starts. I don't play the first half. I just played the second half. And I go out there, and I played great. I had three punt snaps, 2 field goal snaps. All of them were perfect. Did everything I could. Almost recovered a fumble. I got credited with a tackle. I don't think I actually made a tackle, but I think I kind of ran a guy out of bounds, sorta, and they counted it. So I am credited with. I do have a stat. But then, in that game too, our backup quarterback busted his ankle. He got hurt, and that next week they had to make a cut to move in the new quarterback, and I was the guy that got cut. I was the oldest guy on the team. I was the oldest rookie in NFL history, actually. Oldest guy on the team as a rookie, and the other long snapper was good, and he'd struggled a little bit in the playoffs the year before, but he was good, and he was doing well, and he was 6'3", 250, and 7 years younger than me, and all that stuff. And so they kept him, understandably. And that was it. I thought that was the end of football for me. I know I got to wrap it up soon, so sorry. But it's now the next year. It's a year later, right? It's the first. It's preseason 2016, and it's like we've got the election going on, you know, turmoil in our country, you know, division. It's like, are you on this side or that side of everything? Everything's about taking a side, and no one's talking, no one's listening. The communication sucks. People just, you know, they're so dug in on something, and it's just frustrating. It's frustrating as a service member, you know, as a warfighter, to come back to a divided place, you know, where people are just angry all the time. And you feel a little bit forgotten, and you also are just frustrated because, I mean, we know, you know, if you're in a football locker room too, that everybody in there is from somewhere else, looks different, believes different stuff, different values, but we put it all aside and we work together and we figure it out. We don't always even like the people that we're fighting alongside, but we're willing to take a bullet for them. You know what I mean? And our country can learn a lot from that. I truly believe that it's rooms like this, it's people that wear camouflage are going to be the ones that get us out of this ugliness that we're in right now. That and the destruction of social media, probably. But anyway, you know, I just, I truly believe that. Anyway, at this time, everybody's already on edge. And then, you know, Colin Kaepernick started sitting down during the anthem to protest racial inequality and police brutality and stuff like that. And, you know, for me, I grew up a Niner fan. I was a huge Kaepernick fan. I wanted him to take that job as soon as he got there. I thought he was the better quarterback. He led us to a Super Bowl and almost won it. And when I first saw that, my initial reaction was anger, because I felt like he had no idea what he was talking about. I felt like he didn't understand he doesn't understand what patriotism is. He doesn't know what the flag and the anthem represent. He doesn't know. You know, I made decisions based on my experience about what his experience was, which is ignorant. And I kind of had to stop myself, you know. And I got reached out to by a lot of news organizations and publications to write something, to go on air and have an opinion about this whole thing. And I was like, that's not going to help us. Everybody's already got an opinion, you know. I don't want to just throw gasoline on a fire. And I finally agreed to write this open letter to Colin through the Army Times. And I did it with the Army Times because nobody reads the Army Times. And also because I knew I'd get to see the final cut, the final edit before it went out. And I did it. I wrote this open letter just explaining my experiences, but also telling Colin I was willing to listen to what he had to say. And I want to just move forward out of this thing. And, you know, what are we really looking at here? What are measurable goals? Like, how can we work together to find answers? And it went like crazy viral, I think because it was this like centrist approach. You know, it was this idea of like, I don't have all the answers. And yeah, I served in the military. Yeah, I went overseas. Yeah, I was in a football locker room, but like, I'm not the authority on anything, you know? I know what I know from what I experienced. And it's very little. And Colin ended up reaching out to me, and he wanted to meet. And so the next day I went down to San Diego. They were playing the Chargers in the final preseason game. It's Military Appreciation Day because 9/11 is coming up. There was like a flyover, Navy SEALs jumping into the stadium, and Colin's going to protest. He's going to sit again. We meet in the lobby of the team hotel, and we talk for a couple hours about football, about life, about just being dudes, you know, whatever, a normal conversation, a human conversation. And at the end of it, he asked me, is there another way I can protest? Is there something else I can do, you know, to not disrespect you in the military? And I said, look, no matter what you do, people are going to be affected. People are going to be either upset with you. If you stand, people are going to be upset that we're on board with you when you were sitting. You know, it doesn't matter what you do. I said, I want you to stand, but I want you to stand because you feel the way that I do about your country. And if you don't, I'm not going to tell you what to do, you know. I'm not demanding anything out of you. This is my experience. This is why I feel the way I do when the flag is raised and the song is played, but that's my experience. And he said, well, I don't want to sit, you know. He kind of just asked me, like, what do you think? And I said, look, I said, being alongside your teammates is the most important thing, no matter what you do. And if you're not going to stand, if you're pledging not to stand, I think the next best thing would be maybe taking a knee. People take a knee to pray, to propose to their wives. When I go to Arlington and visit one of my brothers who passed, I take a knee in front of his grave to pay respects, you know? And I can't think of a time where kneeling has been disrespectful. That's just me. You know, and he thought that was more powerful than sitting. He agreed to make that adjustment. And I told him I'd stand next to him if he did that, you know. And I said, look, I'm not supporting the protests. There's a lot of things that you say and believe that I have different opinions about, but I respect you as a human being. And what we fought for ultimately, you know, we took the oath to defend the Constitution. And the First Amendment is freedom of speech, and that's what you're doing. And I respect that. And you know, I'm willing to listen, and as long as you're willing to listen too. And so, you know, that night he went out on the field and he took a knee, and he got booed during the song, during the anthem. And I understand why people feel that way. I understand. I don't hate on people that are, you know, fully against what he's doing. And there's a lot of things he's done and said and worn that I don't agree with, that I don't like, you know. I think we should vote. You know, I think everybody should vote. I think there's people that have shed blood that weren't in the military for those rights for everybody, you know. And I think that that's something you should do. That being said, like, all I can control is me, you know, my environment, my situation. I can't control anybody else. I can't focus on the results. And, you know, it's interesting to see how things have gone since then, you know. We haven't moved forward in some ways. We haven't moved forward in other ways. But I'm still fighting. I'm still trying to figure it out, you know. It's a spinning ball of chaos. You know, we don't know. We don't know what's going on. We don't really know the why all the time. But I'm just going to keep fighting. I'm going to keep trying. I'm going to figure out who I am and keep trying to be positive and bring us together. And like I said, I truly believe that y'all are going to be the ones that bring our country back together, you know? Because I miss the unity. I miss that. I miss being able to, all of us be able to have the type of conversations comfortably, you know, like we did in the locker room, we could do in the team room and in the locker room. You know, I hurt for the rest of our country for not being able to have that, and I hope that they eventually get there one day, and I think all of y'all are going to be the ones to help make that happen. So I thank you for your time. I don't know if we have time. Do we have time for any questions?
Sir, we have time for one.
We have time for one question. One question. Out of, it better be a good one. Uh-oh, what does that mean? I think we have time for 2 questions. Sorry, I'm going to override that. We'll get that one too.
Sir, I'm Second Lieutenant Johnny Valentine. I work in the chemistry department, and I watch football from time to time.
From time to time? Jeez.
Sir, my question is, with Colin Kaepernick's recent settlement that he reached with the NFL, how has your opinion on him and his cause been affected? In particular, has the validity of his cause, like, either faltered or gained praise by you?
I don't think it has anything to do with the validity of it. You know, I mean, that's a tough one. You know, when it came to like the collusion case and all that stuff, like, I don't know. I'm not a litigator. And I don't think, and I know a lot of organizations, teams, owners, a lot of them wanted to find a way to make it work with him, right? It wasn't necessarily a case of like the whole league is just against him at all. But there's obviously, there was something there where there was, you know, whether it was a certain number of owners or whatever, that were kind of like, we're not signing this guy. And that's their prerogative. It's a business. I understand that, you know. I mean, to bring him into a locker room is a tough one. You know, you're worried about dividing your fan base, your team. You know, for instance, the Seahawks were looking at him, and Pete Carroll and John Schneider, the GM, called me and asked me what I thought, and I said, man, I gave him the pros and cons. I said, he's not a bad dude. He's a good dude. Like, he's a great player. But at the same time, like, you got to think about a backup quarterback is typically a signal caller. And what if Russell Wilson has a couple bad games? You know what I mean? And you got half the locker room saying, play cap, you know. And then the other half the locker room saying, no, this is Russ's team. He won a Super Bowl. And it just gets confusing. And now at this point, you know, it's a matter of like, they just want the problem to go away, you know. And I think, you know, it was an important conversation for us to have and to keep having. I think it needed to happen, whether you like it or not. Like, that needed to happen to move things forward. And yeah, I mean, I don't really know where it's headed. I don't think he'll play again personally, but I don't think he needs to. You know, I think that it definitely it's an important message for our country, and you know, we need to take that and understand that it's all about communicating and listening. You know, and we have to be able to be sensitive to that, and Colin does too. You know, it's a two-sided thing. It's not just one side needs to listen to the other. It's you know, both sides need to listen and understand why certain things are important to certain people, and it's all our experiences that shape what we feel and what we believe. And yeah, I mean, I didn't really answer your question, but it's a tough question.
Well, yes, sir. I know Brene Brown said yesterday we should ask tough questions. So,
yeah.
Anyways,
There you go.
I just want to say thank you. And given that this happened in the last 48 hours, I understand that most all of us would agree. Not all of us have collected all of our thoughts on that. So,
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Happy Valentine's Day. Had to. Never heard that one.
Hi, Mike Tillman, class of 73. First of all, thank you for your service.
Thank you for
Really,
yours, sir.
Thank you. Some people consider it a delicate subject. I don't think it should be, but I'll use General Mattis's term, post-traumatic stress injury versus disorder. Can you talk about your experiences with that and how you helped yourself and helped your fellow teammates work through those issues?
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, I think more and more the conversation about, just post-traumatic stress, you know, just it being not so much this like syndrome or, you know, disorder or whatever you want to call it. It's just a human condition. That's the biggest point of it all. It's a human issue. It's not a veteran issue. And I think a lot of our country, you know, we hear that, and including myself, you just immediately think of veterans. Part of that's Hollywood's fault, you know. But, you know, for me, I still experience things, whether it's, you know, irritability, sounds are like the most impactful to me. I mean, I cannot sit in a restaurant, and if I might hear like a pot bang in the kitchen, or somebody drops something, like, I just jump every time. Playing at Texas, every time we score, they shoot the cannon. It just jacks me up every time. And it doesn't like set me off into this like, I'm not like seeing red or going to like 1,000-mile stare or anything like that. It just jumped for a minute, and like it's just for 2 seconds, I'm like, oh yeah, okay. But there's various forms of that, you know, and obviously the spectrum is very big on how that affects people. And you know, I'm a big proponent in post-traumatic growth, you know, and having that conversation, understanding that like through these experiences, it makes you not only maybe hyper-vigilant, but it also makes you hyper-capable. You've overcome a lot of these things. You survived a lot of these things, and they may, you know, affect you in some way, but also looking at it in terms of, I got through that. You know, I can go out into the world, whatever my passion and goal and dream is, as crazy as it may sound, like I've done something that very few people were willing to do, very few people were willing to volunteer to do, and I got through it, you know, and I came out the other side, and yeah, like, I deal with stuff, but everybody has challenges. Everybody deals with stuff like that. Everybody's got crap in their life. It's a choice we make. Do we let the stench overwhelm us, or do we turn it into fertilizer? And that's something that I firmly believe. I think some of the greatest achievements by anybody in this world were done by people that have been through some stuff, And they could have been very young when it happened, or they could have been older. And yeah, I think it's a gift in some ways, and I know people will disagree with me on that, because it is frustrating and it is hard, but I see, there's an element or an idea that, you should be proud of those scars, and understand that, like, this is who I am because I was willing to do that, and I've become this person, and people look up to me, and people see that, they hear those words, they hear that acronym even, and sometimes they think negative things, but also they probably think, wow, that person's, like, been through it, and they're still here. And it's so much a mindset. That's a lot of what we talk about in the MVP, Merging Vets and Players, a charity that you mentioned, is we bring together former professional athletes and combat vets and help them find purpose through the transition. Because it's tough, and then transition looks different for everybody. But when you're a part of something big and you have that purpose and that team, I think that the loss of that often affects us more than, what we would call post-traumatic stress. I think sometimes there's such a thing as lack of traumatic stress when we've experienced, and we don't have that in our life. We feel like lost or empty. So I'm all about the public understanding more and more, civilians understanding what it actually looks like, because it varies, it's different for everybody, but that it's relatable for everybody too. Like every human being at some level has post-traumatic stress from something that has happened. It could be a car accident, it could be anything. And just to understand that that's what that is, and we're not these like alien people, that have just done some crazy thing in another country, and we come back and are just a wreck or at risk, all the time. And we need to believe that too, I think, as service members and veterans. But anyway, thank you. That's it. That's all I got. Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
Mr. Boyer, thank you so much for your message on excellence and unity, especially at this time in our nation's history. As part of our, for all of our 2019 NCLS participants, our cadet wing, and our faculty and staff at the Air Force Academy, we'd like to present you with a small token of our appreciation.
Thank you, guys.
Once again, we extend our thanks to our flagship supporter, the Class of 73, the Association of Graduates, and the USOF Endowment, and many other supporters who, through their generosity, made this event possible. If you want to provide feedback, there's something on it, on the app for that. Very fancy. This concludes our lecture. Have a nice day.